What's up, all you basketball fans? Welcome to ExceedTheHype.com. It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. Alright, today's video is entitled, Are the Toronto Raptors losing ground in the Eastern Conference? Right? So, the Eastern Conference has obviously gotten worse. But Cleveland, we'll see what happens with Cleveland. Cleveland still is at the top of the Eastern Conference. We'll see what happens. They may lose Kyrie. He may go somewhere else. But what they get back for him is the important factor in that. They could end up better from the whole situation. They could get somebody or a couple players who fit their team better and fit around LeBron better. And then who knows, Josh Jackson may be part of a deal that makes him end up on Cleveland, and he may be another star. So we'll see what happens, right, with Cleveland. But they're basically set number one, right? Number one or two. And then you have Boston, right? Boston did a lot of work to put some space between them and the Wizards and Toronto. But the issue is, if you have the Wizards at 3 and then you say Toronto's at 4, or Toronto's at 3 and the Wizards at 4, you got to factor in young man, Giannis Antetokounmpo, man. He's coming. We saw in the last playoff series, he was outstanding. The last playoff run, he was, really good in both rounds that he played in. The guy's for real, right? Antetokounmpo is for real. He's going to be the guy who probably takes over the East after LeBron either leaves or, gets old and retires, or whatever the case may be. But Antetokounmpo, in my opinion, is that next guy in the Eastern Conference. So you have to factor him and that the Bucks team, who were very cleverly put together with all those very long wing players or whatever. You have to factor all that stuff in to the equation. And my question is, how well will Toronto hold their position in the Eastern Conference? They still will be a playoff team, of course. They'll still be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. But I just wonder how they're going to hold their position. All right, so let's talk about the team. One of the main reasons I have this question about Toronto is that while we saw the Celtics get better, we saw the Wizards tweak a little bit, but ultimately are about the same. And we see other changes going on in the Eastern Conference. I haven't seen enough from the Raptors. Now, the Raptors still have a very formidable team built around some very, bright stars or whatever. But I just wonder. So let's go through. Okay, you got OG. I know he's a rookie or whatever, and people are very high on him. We'll see what ultimately happens. Then you got guys like Lorenzo Brown. Don't know much about him. Bruno, once again, from Brazil. We're yet to see what he's going to be able to bring to the table in the NBA. Then we get to our first star. You have Demar DeRozan. Now, Demar DeRozan, he's not necessarily one of my favorite players, but his game is one of my favorite games or whatever in the league or whatever, because it's very rare. It's kind of like something you don't see anymore. Somebody who has an elite mid-range game like that. The footwork, the turnarounds, his ability to attack the basket. He is not a good three-point shooter, and to me, it's just, for my opinion, personally, it just irks me anytime a shooting guard can't actually shoot threes. But once again, it depends. Like, one of the best shooting guards, not one of the best shooting guard in the history of the NBA, wasn't always a really super three-point shooter. So I guess it's just my personal preference or whatever. You got people like Dwayne Wade who, not a great three-point shooter. So you don't necessarily have to be a great three-point shooter. That's just one thing that irks me about DeRozan. Because when I watched the Raptors play, I just noticed like he could be able to create so much more space if he had that inside, that mid-range game working with a strong outside game or whatever. But who knows? This could be the year that he brings that three-point shot percentage up and becomes a more formidable from long range. But other than that, his mid-range game, to me, he's the best mid-range game in the NBA at this point. I just love watching him play mid-range. And then he's an incredible athlete. obviously one of the high flyers in the NBA, super quick, can get by anybody. He's somebody with almost a total package except for that outside shot. So, and they're still building around him. They're paying a lot of money to both him and Kyle Lowry. So and they gave him a lot of years. So this is going to be the Toronto core for the foreseeable future. There's nobody else really and they're certainly not going to trade either one of the two. So DeRozan, if he's your best player, you still have a very good chance to be a very good team. Let's go to Serge Ibaka. Now, we all know Serge Ibaka was the big acquisition in the middle of the season last year. And, you know, it turned out well. Like, at first during the season, it didn't. We wondered how the fit was going to work and things of that nature. He can't stretch the floor, but he hadn't been shooting at that high of a percentage recently. And then he kind of disappeared from relevance or whatever when he left OKC. So we wondered. But when we saw them in the playoffs, we saw him kind of, his game kind of reborn, and we remembered why Serge Ibaka was a thing, right? So I believe with a full offseason, a full training camp, getting acclimated to these guys even more after that playoff run. Because remember, there was a late acquisition. It was like at the trade deadline. So he didn't have a full season. Having a full training camp, I think he's going to come back. He's going to play even better this year. One rumor that went on in OKC was that he was unhappy with his role in the offense. And as we all know, his role in the offense was basically like a pick and roll guy, but he never got that role. He never got the pass on the roll to the basket, really. So it was mostly him getting back out to the three-point line and picking and popping, or just spotting up for threes in the corner. That was the big part of his offense. That's really where he got all of his buckets in one of the two situations. And he felt like he could do more. He felt like he had some post work that he can do, some ISO type stuff as far as catching the ball in the post against a single defender and, like, you know, working, doing a fadeaway or you know, showing off footwork, getting a hook shot. He believed that he can do more offensively. That's not pick and roll, right? So with that being the case, he was somebody who had talked about being traded even before he was traded. So then he went to Orlando. Orlando is not a spot for anybody, especially if you're a good player at this point, because you're just not going to be capable of doing anything. That team, the organization's bad right now. That team's bad. It's just not going to be a whole lot of hope for you if you go to Orlando. So the trade to Toronto, and especially this season with this backcourt, we'll see. We'll see. Now that he's had time, now that he's used to the guys, now that he's used to coaching staff, now that he's going to understand all the plays and all that stuff, we'll see if they end up featuring him more, and if he can handle it, right? Because ultimately this is what he wanted, and then now he's on a good team again. So we'll see with Serge Ibaka. If he were to take his game to another level and be that inside force, because ultimately I feel like that's what Toronto really needs, is an inside force. Valanciunas was that I think 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever. But Valanciunas gets hurt a lot, and I want to say he's a bit too slow or whatever. He would, if they were really to feature him in the offense a lot, it would slow the game way slower than they would be comfortable playing. So being Serge Ibaka, somebody who get up and down the court faster, I think it's more plausible with Serge Ibaka. But ultimately, we'll see. Once again, we'll see. But if he can take his game to the next level, that inside presence would be really, really good for Toronto. Talk about Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, one of the premier point guards in the NBA. He's one of my personal favorites because of the arc of his career. If you remember Kyle Lowry, he got drafted to the Memphis Grizzlies, I believe. And for many, many years, he was a backup to Mike Conley, which, I mean, rightfully so. Mike Conley is an exceptional player. The irony is Mike Conley has not been an all-star yet, and Kyle Lowry has multiple times. However, that does not mean that he's better than Kyle Lowry. It means that he's in the Eastern Conference. He's going to make an all-star game in the Eastern Conference. But be that as it may, Kyle Lowry has definitely turned himself into a star point guard in this league. And I really respect him for it. I respect his game. I respect the patience, because it's not like he went to Memphis, he was behind Mike Conley, he went to another team, and then he was a star. It didn't work like that. He went to the Rockets, he went to this team, he went to that team, he went to that team. he got to Toronto and he finally, I won't say he finally got a coach that really believed in him, but he got a coach that believed in him, basically. I appreciate the fact that he was able to build his career the way he was, going from team to team or whatever. And now he's in the Eastern Conference and he's a perennial all-star. He's somebody who will still be good for a while. I did think there was a possibility he would leave, but I guess he didn't like what he saw out there because there was a market for point guards this offseason. There was definitely a market for point guards, but he didn't end up leaving. And that's good for him. He found a home. He found his success, his great success in Toronto. So it's definitely a good thing that he stayed. He's going to be an all-star every season. Basically every season in the Eastern Conference, he's going to be an all-star. He's going to be on the playoff team, so he's going to get to play in the playoffs every year. He's not going to have to deal with a lot of losing. And then, they respect him. He's the star. He's one of the big stars in Canada or whatever. So, and he's going to be that guy until he gets really old, right? So it was a very smart move for Kyle Lowry to just go ahead and stay. And ultimately, I think it'll be good for that Toronto team. Let's talk about their offseason acquisition. CJ Miles, good shooter, good defender. So he's definitely somebody who can provide them with some depth off the bench, some more floor spacing. He's a pretty big wing player, so I'm sure he can play some 2 and 3. So that helps them a lot if they're playing against one of the tougher matchups or whatever. Like Boston will probably be a tough matchup for them, but with more wing depth or whatever, they will also be able to kind of counteract what Boston did. Norman Powell is another player. So we saw a season ago, was it a season 2 seasons ago or whatever, Norman Powell really came alive or whatever. And then he kind of tapered off this past season or whatever. I'm curious, after they traded to kind of free up some more minutes for him. They traded Terrence Ross, of course. I'd like to see Norman Powell continue his development to getting better and better and better. He's somebody I can see really being like a 6-man, or I can see him starting. I think with most other teams in the NBA, as a shooting guard, I feel like he'd be starting. But there he's playing behind Demar DeRozan, and he's not going to start over Demar DeRozan. So it's tough for him there, unless DeMar DeRozan was to move to a 3 or whatever. But I really think this guy's a solid player. I think he's going to be a good future piece for this team. And I think he's going to be good for them for a long time. Let's talk about their acquisition. So they just added a player, KJ McDaniels. They just added KJ McDaniels to the team. A lot of people are going to be like, okay, well, whatever. KJ McDaniels isn't a name that we recognize or whatever. But as somebody who is a Rockets fan or whatever, or watches the Rockets, supports the Rockets, whatever the case whatever the case is or whatever, KJ McDaniels is a lot better than advertised, right? He's somebody who I think is going to be very successful in the NBA if he can get the proper opportunity. Somebody who I think could be very successful in the NBA going forward. Because what is the NBA turning into? The NBA is turning into a lot of wing players, right? Yeah, you have your good scoring point guards these days or whatever, and the big man is dying and this and that and this and that. I think the scoring point guard thing is a fad that will fade, right? I think the game is going to having a bunch of versatile wing players, a bunch of people who's like 6'8", 6'6", 6'8", or whatever, playing multiple positions, doing causing havoc for any team that can't get with the program. We saw it first with Golden State, even though you have like Steph Curry on the court or whatever. He doesn't fit that description, but everybody else does on that death lineup. And that death lineup has been basically ruling the NBA the last couple seasons, even though they did get beaten by Cleveland. But why did they get beaten by Cleveland? Because they have the ultimate matchup issue, right? So KJ McDaniels is somebody who I think could become a very good defender in the NBA. He has a body for it. And I think he has the motor to become a very good defender or whatever. He's somebody who I think outside shooting can improve. I think his overall skills can improve a great deal, but the upside is there because he's a tremendous athlete. or whatever, and he just has the physical tools to be a very good player in the NBA. He just has the physical tools to be a very good player in the NBA, and a lot of people fit that fit that description. But I think with him, I think it just depends on the proper situation, the opportunity. If he gets the opportunity to get the minutes, you get the opportunity to prove something to the coach. And I think he can get that in Toronto. So it's a 1-year deal. If they like him, they'll keep him, I'm sure. But it's a chance to bid his value up. So I think, ultimately, I think Toronto had, I'm a little disappointed with the offseason. I thought they should add more talent. I thought they should try to do what they can do to try to add another star to that team to really try to compete with Boston or whatever, to try to keep pace or whatever. They didn't. I guess the proper deals weren't out there for them, or any deal required them breaking up their core, which it probably did. So it's unfortunate, but ultimately I still think they'll still maintain where they are in the Eastern Conference currently, between that 3 and 5 spot. So they're going to be battling out with Boston, Washington, and Antetokounmpo's Bucks, and we'll see ultimately who comes out on top. All right, let me know what you think. If you disagree with my assessment, if you agree or whatever, leave all the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. All right, see you next time.